Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni. Great Malabite.
Good morning, Ruben. Action. Yes. Good morning, Rufai.
Action.
Yes. Let's start the review with this day, Nigeria's newspaper of record. The lead story, AGF, Attorney General of the Federation, federal government studying Supreme Court ruling halting enforcement of cash swap deadline to take necessary steps before February 15. Again, CBN Governor meets Buhari at Villa. Okewale, Paul Usoro, Mike Ezekome, Ahmed Raji, Koinshola Ajayi, others react. CSO's false verdict. Tinubu, Wike hail ruling. PDP alleges fresh moves to use APC lawmakers to disrupt elections. Labour Party urges Nigerians to resist plots to undermine polls. Yes, the federal government, yes, they said it was studying the Supreme Court ruling that halted temporarily the deadline for the phase out of 1,000 Naira, the old 1,000 Naira, 500 Naira, and 200 Naira notes. Yes, but the Daily Trust newspaper is reporting that indeed the federal government actually had taken some steps to upturn that ruling. Naira crisis, federal government files objection against Supreme Court decision. Buhari receives a Mefele Malami after Apex Court ruling. Experts profile solution as IMF seeks deadline extension. 2.6 trillion Naira in circulation, not too much. Yes, according to the report by the Daily Trust newspaper, the federal government yesterday filed a preliminary objection challenging the application by Kaduna, Zamfara, and Kogi states against the implementation of the February 10th currency swap deadline. Of course, in the objection filed by Mahmoud Magaji-san, the federal government argued that the suit ought not to have been brought before the Supreme Court as the relief sought were against an agency of the federal government, the CBN, on its powers to withdraw old bank notes and introduce new ones under the CBN Act 2007. So the federal government already taking steps to upturn, to quash that ex parte order granted yesterday. Now, the Guardian newspaper, yes, the lead story also, federal government insists on February 10, asks Apex Court to dismiss state suits. Same story, but front page, photographs there. That is a federal highway, Lagos-Abeokuta Expressway at Ilepo, Okiodo, Lagos, abandoned by the federal government. This is the state of the road as at yesterday. I'm sure that is for the attention of the Lagosian, who is the Minister of Works, Babatunde Fashola. Is this how you will leave this road by May 29 this year, when this administration will end? So this is a reminder that there's still a number of very bad federal roads all over the place. Now, the Daily Sun newspaper, the story below the photograph, elections will hold as a scheduled INEC chair, says CBN NMPCL assured of cash petrol supply. Yes, we need to deal with this issue of fuel scarcity. The NMPCL CEO has been talking, but we want to see the result of all the action. Yesterday it was reported him saying we have enough petrol, but they are in the wrong location. Today it's being reported that he's talking of arbitrage, people taking the petrol out of the country. So we don't have security agencies anymore. Of course, our borders, notorious for its porous nature. So anybody can take tankers. We're not talking of donkeys now. Tankers out of the country without being challenged. So what are the security agencies doing at the border post if that is an excuse? Petrol is still being subsidized by the federal government, and as such, this petrol should be available to all Nigerians at the subsidized rates. How NNPC does it, we don't want excuses, because we are spending our scarce resources, trillions of naira, to subsidize this petrol, and NNPC is in charge of importing these petroleum products, shameful as it is anyway. Now, the Nation newspaper, relief, joy, and Supreme Court hold CBN deadline on old Naira. Rivers seeks to join World Bank, IMF deadline ill-conceived. That's how the Nation newspaper is reporting that story. Now, the Vanguard newspaper, old Naira notes deadline. Protest trail Supreme Court order. Federal government seeks dismissal of ruling. Now, the New Telegraph newspaper, INEC appeals Osun Election Tribunal judgment. That is quite interesting, because overvoting, that's what led to the tribunal decision to award that election to Oyetola. Now, if Beavers, one of the ailments Beavers was supposed to cure was overvoting. So I'm not surprised that INEC is in the forefront of appealing that judgment. We'll see how it pans out. Now, the Nigerian Tribune newspaper, yes, the lead story, IMF asks for extension as Supreme Court holds February 10 deadline. Now, the foreign newspapers, quickly, the Times of London, give us wings for freedom. Zelenskyy addressed MPs and meets King in historic British visit. Yes, the president of Ukraine, the Ukrainian leader Zelenskyy, had this surprise visit to the UK yesterday and used the speech to MPs at the Westminster Hall to ask for combat jets, combat aircraft to prosecute the war. And he's saying, we have freedom, give us wings to protect it. And Ruben Rufai, Rishi Sunak seemed to be well disposed to that request.
Well, what Rishi Sunak has done is to ask the Defense Ministry to take a look at the request. No decision has been taken yet. But you recall that after Ukraine was given ships by Germany, by Poland, by the United States, he went a step further. Like Oliver Twist, Volodymyr Zelenskyy is asking for more, and that's a simple way to put his trip to the UK. Today, he will be meeting in France with President Macron and also the German Chancellor, again to ask for fighter jets. He wants the British to give him their Typhoon combat jets. He wants the Americans to give him F-1 jets. He wants other countries in Europe to give him jets. Because Russia is threatening a very decisive onslaught on Ukraine in a matter of days. And Ukraine wants to reclaim Donetsk in East Ukraine. So the battle is serious. However, our fear is about the escalation and the possible slip into World War III. Now that NATO, as a result of the inefficiency, as it were, you can argue about that, but that's one major point that is being argued in the literature of the United Nations. So now you have NATO getting into that fight. Will there not be serious consequences? With Russia threatening that Europe will pay for it if they get involved in the fight. That's that about that. The second point that I want to talk about is to use this opportunity to congratulate our colleague, Comrade Joe Ajero, who has now emerged as president of the Nigerian Labour Congress. He had been General Secretary of the Nigerian Union of Electricity Employees. He had been deputy president of the NLC, but most notably, he was a reporter, correspondent, assistant editor at Vanguard. So we now have one of our own, if any.
Yes.
Don't use this as an opportunity for labor activism. You now have a journalist leading the Nigerian Labour Congress, and he has said that he will use his tenure to defend the interest of the average Nigerian worker, starting with this scarcity of Naira notes. But he's a journalist. He should lead with a sense of balance and a sense of reason, because journalists are not supposed to be emotional. They are supposed to stay on the path of reason.
Well, it's not a labor leader. Leave his journalism cap out of this.
That's his background.
I really want to react to this. And I think we should be careful with the West fighting their wars, their internal wars.
No, Rufai, when the superpowers are involved, the United Nations, I just wanted to address that issue. They are powerless whenever the superpowers are involved. So it is not new, Robert.
You want to tell me about the United Nations?
So it is not new that they look powerless now.
No, I want to say something very critical this morning. And please, let's not be swayed by the West flexing their muscle and fighting their war. Naftali Bennett, the former Israeli Prime Minister, granted an interview on a podcast where he stated that he intervened in the early days of the war, Putin gave him reassurance that he was not going to kill Zelenskyy, and they were going to settle it amongst themselves. But when he took the proposal to America, Macron and Olashov, they rebuffed the proposal and said they wanted to fight Putin head on. The West has not been able to react to that interview by Naftali Bennett. That's to speak volumes about what is really going on in their intricacies.